Today's lesson is Concrete Jungles, How Wildlife is Adapting to City Living. Hello, everyone. I'm Mike.
I'm Roger.
And today we are going to be looking at how animals are moving in and adapting or getting used to living among us. Now, we're not really talking about most of the animals that you would expect to find in cities: pets, cats, dogs, pigeons in the park, rats maybe crawling around dark alleys late at night. No, we're talking about what would normally be considered wild animals who you would expect to find living in forests and woods and trees and places like that. But increasingly, as cities get bigger, some of these animals are becoming very good at being city dwellers, just like most humans are.
Indeed. And of course, we're talking about concrete jungles, which often refers to the city because with all those buildings, it seems like the city is a big jungle. But now we're actually talking about the fact that we've got lots of animals running around in the cities, not just those rats or stray cats, but actually wild animals coming down from the mountains or from forests or whatever. So yeah, let's talk about how wildlife is adapting to city living. Let's begin by listening to the first paragraph.
Concrete jungles, how wildlife is adapting to city living. With their busy traffic, towers of concrete, and polluted air, cities seem like the last place wild animals would choose to live. And yet, more and more are moving in. Some are forced to as cities expand into their habitats, while others are drawn by the abundant food and shelter that urban spaces provide.
大家好，标题中看到名词 wildlife， 它的意思是野生动物或是野生生物。例如 Wildlife photography requires patience and a good eye for detail. 野生动物摄影需要耐心和对细节的敏锐观察。或者 The national park contains a wide variety of wildlife. 这座国家公园拥有各式各样的野生动物。再来看到动词 adapt， 表示适应。例如Animals must adapt to changing environments to survive. 动物必须适应变化的环境才能生存。或是 Flora has had a hard time adapting to her new school. Flora 一直很难适应她的新学校。另外 adapt 还有另一个意思是改编。例如 The writer adapted the book into a TV series. 这位作家将这本书改编为电视连续剧。也可以说 The play was adapted into a Hollywood movie. 这出戏剧被改编成一部好莱坞电影。下一个介绍动词 expand， 它的意思是拓展、扩充或是扩大。例如 The company is looking to expand its workforce significantly. 该公司正指望大幅扩展人力。再来看到名词 habitat， 表示动植物的自然生长地或是栖息地。可以说The destruction of the forest has led to the loss of natural habitats for many animals. 森林的破坏导致了许多动物自然栖息地的丧失。又或者说 The forest is a natural habitat for a broad variety of plants and animals. 森林是各式各样动植物的自然栖息地。下一个看到形容词 abundant， 它的意思是大量的、丰富的或是充足的。例如There was an abundant supply of fresh fruit at the market today. 今天市场上供应大量的新鲜水果。再看一个例子 The region's abundant sunshine makes it ideal for growing wine grapes. 这个地区充足的日照使之成为种植酿酒葡萄的理想地点。
All right, here we are. So let's look at a couple of words there we saw in our title. Wildlife, of course, are wild animals. This would not be your domesticated animals, animals in homes like pets, animals on farms like cows, chickens, and pigs. Wildlife would be the types of animals that many of us might only see in zoos, on nature television programs, or if you're lucky enough and you're out in the mountains or on safari in Africa or somewhere like that, the wild animals you see there, that would be wildlife as opposed to pets and and domestic animals, and they are adapting. To adapt is sort of to change to fit a current situation. As the weather changes, we have to adapt the clothing that we wear. And of course, we also know from Charles Darwin and evolution that animals have been adapting for millions and millions of years as they change to fit different situations, different environments, and different ecologies. So now they're adapting to move from forests to concrete jungles, which, as Roger explained, is another name for cities, where we have large concrete buildings as if they are the large trees that you find in a forest or a jungle. So they're adapting to city living. Let's see how this happens. It says, with their busy traffic, towers of concrete, and polluted air, cities seem like the last place wild animals would choose to live. I mean, when you describe it that way, yes, I agree with that. There is busy traffic, very dangerous, of course, for animals to be crossing the road. They don't understand the rules of the road and stoplights and things like that. Towers of concrete, where can you live? Where can you get food when you're surrounded by concrete buildings as if we're in the center of the city? And polluted air, well, of course, that's something that human animals we have to deal with, but animals who can make their home anywhere they want, you would be surprised if they would choose to live in smoky, crowded, and polluted cities. So it would be seemingly the last place you would imagine or guess that wild animals would choose to live. However, they do.
Indeed, it says, and yet, still, more and more are moving in. So you don't really expect wild animals to choose a city as its habitat. You think they would stay in the mountains or in the forests or maybe even in the ocean. But no, more and more of them are moving into the cities for some reason. Now, some are forced to, as cities expand into their habitats, while others are drawn by the abundant food and shelter that urban spaces provide. So this sentence here gives us some of the reasons why all these animals are moving into the cities. Some are forced to. They don't have a choice. They have to because these cities are expanding into their habitats. Okay, so we've got the urban sprawl, for example. Cities get bigger and bigger. They build more apartment buildings and apartment blocks and commercial centers and things like that out in the suburbs, which used to be kind of rural area, and that's where those animals lived. So these cities have expanded or gotten larger in these areas, and we're talking about their habitats. A habitat, of course, is where an animal lives, like the Formosan black bear. I think its habitat is in the high central mountain range.
There you go. So they're increasingly having an urban or city habitat, which, as Roger explained, is the environment that they live in, while other types of animals are drawn to the abundant food and shelter that urban spaces provide. So clearly, the motivation or the reason why animals are moving into the city can be different. So some of them, just their homes disappear as the cities expand and get bigger, but others are drawn, they're attracted to the abundant food. When we have abundance of something or abundant something, an abundance would be a noun, abundant would be the adjective, we have more than enough. So if you're having a party, you'd like to have abundant food and drinks for everyone, more than enough. You don't want to run out of snacks and popcorn and chips during your party, like you don't want to run out of drinks or ice or things like that for your guests. So yes, cities have a lot of food sources. Of course, people might leave food out for the animals. The animals can steal food. And of course, many animals are famous for sort of going through our garbage cans at night and finding the tasty treats that humans don't eat. So there's more than enough food for animals and shelter as well. There are certain places in parks and of course in buildings. Bats are famous for, making their homes in the roofs of old buildings and things like that. So a lot of shelter, a lot of places for these animals to live, sleep, and raise their young, more maybe than in some of the forested areas around the city. Let's have a look at the second part of our article. We're going to be learning about cockatoos in Sydney, Australia. In Sydney, Australia, for example, large flocks of cockatoos have become a familiar sight. Highly intelligent creatures, they quickly learn skills that help them thrive in urban spaces. They've figured out how to force open trash can lids, allowing them to snack to their heart's desire. They've also been filmed operating public drinking fountains, a skill they seem to have learned from carefully observing humans.
Okay, let's go to Australia. Let's go down under, and we're going to the city of Sydney, which, of course, is famous for its Harbour Bridge and the Opera House and their famous fireworks on New Year's Eve. For example, in Sydney, Australia, large flocks of cockatoos have become a familiar sight. Now, a cockatoo is a kind of bird, and it's got the crest on top of its head. It's kind of a unique bird from that part of the world.
Yes, we read highly intelligent creatures, so they're very smart. They quickly learn skills that help them thrive in urban spaces. Of course, animals that adapt more easily would be more likely to be successful moving into cities and other places they don't normally live, and cockatoos with their big brains, their intelligence, have done very well. Here's a good example. They've figured out how to force open trash can lids, allowing them to snack to their heart's desire. So they're sort of problem-solving birds. They've figured out, or they've discovered the solution. They've found the answer to how to force open trash can lids. A lot of people in Western countries especially, or countries with maybe a little bit more space around the homes, they keep the trash in cans outside, maybe in the backyard, behind the house, by the garage or something. And yeah, in a lot of places, people have sort of locks or little levers that they kind of use to keep the lid on the trash can to stop some of these animals from getting in there. Well, cockatoos are so smart, they've figured out how to open these, how to sort of remove the lock or take the little handle off the thing that stops them from getting in. And once they get in, well, it's party time. It allows them to snack to their heart's desire. When you do something to your heart's desire, or to your heart's content, I think we can also say, you do it as much as you want. So on the weekend or during a school holiday, kids might be playing video games to their heart's desire. At Chinese New Year, you can stay up late and snack and watch TV and play mahjong to your heart's desire for a week or so. As much as you want, you can have your fill of some kind of thing, generally something, of course, you enjoy and really like doing.
Right. I think they probably might have some problems opening up a dumpster, which is much larger and it has a very heavy lid.
But if they could team up together.
Could be.
Like
they could work together.
40 cockatoos.
They might
their
actually have that sort of sense of cooperation or whatever. You never know. I guess you'd have
doomed.
Indeed, we are. That means our dumpsters aren't even safe anymore. But yes, indeed, they can force open those trash can lids and they can munch on those treats there to their heart's desire or to their heart's content. And they've also been filmed operating public drinking fountains, a skill they seem to have learned from carefully observing humans. So indeed, they're learning by watching here. They see humans drinking from public drinking fountains. That's where you kind of lean over and you turn a little knob and water squirts up into an arc. And then you drink that water. So they've been watching humans and they thought, hey, if we do that, we can get a drink too. So they've been filmed doing that. And you can probably see those films online somewhere. It's probably quite a sight to see. Okay, let's move on now to the next part of our lesson. We're going to the UK now and talk about the foxes there.
On the other side of the world, in the UK, it's foxes that have made themselves at home in cities. There are around 10,000 in London alone. Often seen as pests due to their tendency to tear into garbage bags and befoul people's well-kept gardens, they've grown increasingly streetwise over recent decades. Once frequent victims of traffic, some have recently been spotted waiting for the green light at crosswalks before stepping onto the road.
第三部分看到名词 pest 表示有害的动物、害兽或是害虫。例如 The farmer set traps to catch the pests that were damaging his crops. 那名农夫设置陷阱来捕捉破坏农作物的害虫。也可以说 The garden was full of pests that were destroying the plants. 菜园里充满着破坏植物的害虫。最后介绍单字 tendency 这个名词指的是倾向。经常的行为也可以是趋势的意思。举例来说 There has been a growing tendency among younger people to marry later or not at all. 年轻一代有晚婚或不婚的趋势。或是 Stuart has the tendency to say the first thing that comes to his mind. Stuart 常常想到什么就说什么。
All right, we are back. So we've already learned about how cockatoos are doing quite well, thank you very much, in Sydney, Australia. Now let's head over to Europe. We're going to go to the UK, Great Britain, and find out about foxes. Yeah, this one's maybe not quite as surprising to me as cockatoos operating public drinking fountains in Sydney, Australia. But still, to think of a big city like London having a fox population is actually a little interesting. It says on the other side of the world in the UK, it's foxes that have made themselves at home in cities. There are around 10,000 in London alone. Now, that is quite a shocking statistic. They've made themselves at home. They've become quite comfortable. They've become urbanized creatures, I guess you could say, to the tune of 10,000. Now, London is a big city, and yes, it has sort of a dense urban center, but it also has many suburbs. I don't think we're seeing foxes hanging out in front of Big Ben or walking across Tower Bridge or something like that, but maybe in the leafy suburbs, in some of the parks and things on the outskirts of town, they do have a fox problem. It says often seen as pests due to their tendency to tear into garbage bags and befoul people's well-kept gardens. They've grown increasingly streetwise over recent decades, so maybe not quite as popular as cockatoos in Australia. They cause a few problems. They make messes. They have a tendency to do this, so they're regarded as pests. A pest is a type of animal that brings problems to humans and to where we live and things like that. It could be a pest that brings disease, like cockroaches or rats or mice or things like that. Mosquitoes, of course, can be pests. So we can use this in sort of a scientific, biological way to talk about animals that can be vectors or can be carriers of disease. But we also use pest as something that just annoys you. So a fly can be a pest when you're trying to sleep, or a mosquito buzzing around your ear at nighttime. But in other ways, like with animals who do bring dirt and pollution and can spread disease, they are a more serious health problem, especially in a dense urban area. So they're considered pests. They're considered unwanted and undesirable animals to have around. And this is because of their tendency, their habit, the frequency of this kind of behavior. When we talk about your tendency to do something, that's what you usually do, commonly do, or frequently do. So they frequently tear into garbage bags, which of course spreads garbage around and also may increase the number of rats and other animals that are now feeding on all this garbage that's been spread around. And they befoul people's well-kept gardens. When I see the word befoul, I'm thinking they kind of use your garden like a toilet. So they're kind of leaving poop and pee around. They're ripping up your flower beds. Maybe they're eating the tulip bulbs or the tomatoes in your garden. They're also just basically causing messes and destruction in people's lovely gardens. And the British do love their gardens, so I could see why this would make them especially unpopular. But they've grown to be very wily and experienced urban dwellers, haven't they?
Yes, they've grown to be very streetwise over recent decades. If you're streetwise, of course, you know how to survive in the streets. So foxes probably know that the police or animal control, they're all trying to catch them. The foxes are aware of this. They know where to hide. They know how to run away. So they become very streetwise. And I would think that, don't the British like a fox hunting too? So
they do, but it's largely illegal now. And of course, they never fox hunt in cities. So I don't think that really
risking killing
affects
somebody.
These streetwise urban foxes aren't afraid of the fox hunts, no.
Exactly. I think my parents said they saw foxes near their house back where I'm from there, but I guess there are quite a few of them in London now. I guess they're attracted to the cities here. Maybe they're leaving the countryside or whatever. And once frequent victims of traffic, some have recently been spotted waiting for the green light at crosswalks before stepping onto the road. I think even some of them have gone down into the underground. They're waiting for trains there. They're getting on the double-decker buses. They can even go up to the second level and get the seat on the front part for the better view or whatever. So yes, they're getting more and more streetwise. And yes, indeed, they used to be victims of traffic, so they weren't streetwise before, so they were probably getting run over all the time. But now they've gotten streetwise and they know, hey, I'm not supposed to cross the street at this particular moment. I'll wait for the light to turn green and then I'll cross and I won't get splattered on the pavement or on the street.
There you go. A crosswalk, of course, would be that part of the street where there's big, thick white lines painted on the road indicating to drivers that this could be a place where people will be walking across the road. And, of course, to pedestrians, to people on foot, that this is the safe place to cross. In England, they have zebra crossings. crossings. That's what they call them because, of course, the black and white lines that you see there remind people of the stripes of a zebra. We can also call these pedestrian crossings. Pedestrian being, of course, as I mentioned, someone on foot, although maybe we have to call them fox walks or something like that. So foxes have become very comfortable in urban areas. I'm sure there are some people who like them because foxes are often considered kind of cute animals and things, but it would be also a potential hazard, I imagine. Certain drivers would avoid hitting the fox, and it could potentially cause accidents, right? Late at night, if you're in the middle of a city and suddenly an animal darts out in front of your car, you could think it's a pet dog or cat. You'd swerve and make an abrupt maneuver, and all of a sudden you could have an accident on your hands, all because those foxes are headed off to the nearest tasty garbage bags. So there you go, a couple of good examples of animals doing very well, thank you very much, in urban areas, even if humans aren't exactly thrilled with this. And we're going to have a couple more examples tomorrow.
Indeed, but right now we're going to stop our lesson and listen now to Henny.
各位同学大家好，我是 Hanny。 我们来看今天的文法重点。课文第二部分提到，在澳洲雪梨，大群的凤头鹦鹉已成为常见的景象。文中是用 large flocks of cockatoos 来表达大群的凤头鹦鹉。那这边我们来介绍一些表示动物群体的单位词。英文里面有许多修饰群体的计量词，那随着对象不同，用到的计量词也会有所不同。那第一个介绍 flock， 它可以用来指人群、羊群，或是用来描述鸟啊、鸡等等体型比较小的动物群，像 a flock of tourists， 一大群的观光客， a flock of birds， 一群鸟， a flock of sheep， 一群绵羊。好，第二个介绍 herd， H-E-R-D， 它是用来指畜群、兽群，用来描述群居的动物，像是牛、马、大象、鹿等等，所以我们就可以用 a herd of cattle 来表达一群牛， a herd of deer 来表达一群鹿。第三个介绍 pack， P-A-C-K， 通常是用来描述狼或是犬类，所以可以用 a pack of wolves， 就是一群狼， a pack of wild dogs， 一群野狗。好，第四个介绍 swarm， 它是表达像蜜蜂、蚂蚁等等这一类群聚型昆虫的一群，像 a swarm of bees， 一群蜜蜂， a swarm of ants， 就是一群蚂蚁。第五个介绍 cloud 这个字，它可以用来表达空中集体移动的一群，像 a cloud of bees， 一群蜜蜂， a cloud of flies， 一群苍蝇，或是 a cloud of mosquitoes， 一群蚊子。第六个介绍 school， 常常用来描述鱼群或者是海洋生物，像 a school of fish， 就是一群鱼， a school of dolphins， 就是一群海豚，还有 a school of whales， 一群鲸鱼等等。好，那么课文第三部分他则提到，在世界另一端的英国，狐狸已经在城市中安家，光是伦敦就有大约10000只。文中用到 It's foxes that have made themselves at home in cities， 那这句是属于分列句的用法，它其实本来也可以很简单就写作 Foxes have made themselves at home in cities， 只是透过了分列句就可以强调 foxes， 表达说已经在城市安家的正是狐狸这种动物。好，那我们来学习这样的用法。要强调句子里面的某部分时，常使用到分列句，那步骤就是把你原本句子要强调部分摆在 it is 跟 that 之间，或是 it was 跟 that 之间。强调的部分可以是原句当中的主词、受词、时间副词或地方副词等等。接着就把句子其他的部分丢到 that 之后，所以它的句型就是 it is 或是 it was 加强调的部分加 that， 再加句子其余的部分。例如 He became interested in photography in college，他在大学时对摄影产生了兴趣。我们用分列句来强调 in college， 那么句子会写作 It was in college that he became interested in photography。 正是在大学的时候，他对摄影产生了兴趣。好，那以上是今天重点整理，我们回顾今天的单字吧。
Wildlife. We saw some amazing wildlife during our walk through the woods this morning. Adapt. After moving to a new city, Heidi was quickly able to adapt to her new school. Expand. The restaurant chain has expanded in recent years and now has branches in several countries. Habitat. With pollution on the rise, it's important to better protect the natural habitats of wild animals. Abundant. Because of the abundant amount of rain this year, the crops have grown well. Pest. Farmers often use traps to catch common pests, such as mice and various insects. Tendency. Luke has a tendency to worry too much about things he can't control.
Well, that brings us to the end of another edition of our program, and please make sure you join us again next time. From all of us here, I am Roger.
I am Mike.
See you next time.